share screen, yeah. Okay. Oh, two people. Hi. Hey, everybody. I have a different setup today.
Hi.
Hey.
Well, I was here on Tuesday, but could not see you.
Well, I can see you now, and I hope you can see me.
I can see you and I can hear you, and I'm thrilled to death.
Good. Well, today I'm in my sunroom, and so I'm going to be working through my phone like I've done before, but it'll be much brighter. So I think it'll help everybody out.
That's great.
Yeah. How's everybody doing today?
Hi.
Good.
I haven't met you. My name's Regan. So looking for, I make a lot of knitting mistakes, so I really need this.
Well, you know what? Sometimes when you do that, then you just learn more and more, right?
Well, that's the hope.
Well, very good, very good. Once we're just a tiny bit past 2, then I'm going to do a screen share so I can show you all the things that I use when I fix my my work. Typically, when I have this class in my shop, I knit the same swatch that you're going to see, so everybody has a chance to fix it. So I don't plan to go very fast, but I do only have one example of each problem. So I hope that I hope you'll learn a lot from it. It's the mistakes that I see most often in the shop when people come in and say, oh God, what am I going to do with this? And that's how I help them through.
Wonderful.
Okay, good.
We'll take advantage of you.
Well, that's okay. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. All right, got somebody else. Okay. And I have let quite a few people in. I don't get to see everybody, but I do believe I can hear everybody. So that's good. All right. Oh, let's see. My iPad is ringing. How's that? Don't know why. Oh well, not important. Okay, let's get started. Now that I think we're at 2 o'clock, and I'm going to put this to the side, and I'm going to screen share. All right. Okay. And there it is.
Wonderful.
I hope you can see everything. And I'm going to work pretty close to my phone so you can see this is my swatch. And I hope you can see all the things that we're going to fix. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are the tools that I use on a daily basis to help people with their problems, okay? The first thing when they bring me something, they say, oh, I have too many stitches, or I don't have enough, or how come my count is off? And I'll say, well, where are your stitch markers? I don't use them. So my hint to you, even if you're not doing a stitch pattern, is still to use stitch markers so you have an idea of how many you're working with. So let's say you've got a shawl or a scarf, and you have so many stitches on, but then it starts to get bigger or it starts to get smaller. And I said, well, how many stitches do you have? Well, that's not what I started out with. I said, well, if you mark them every 10, then you have an idea every time you go back and forth that you will have those 10 stitches. Okay, so that's what those stitch markers are for here. The locking stitch marker, I would suggest you have at least 1 or 2 of these in your project bags, because if you have a drop stitch or 1 or 2 or whatever, this will hold it. You just put it through the stitch, put it on here, and it'll hold it until you can get to it. Okay. This is a stitch fixer from Coco Knits. I'm going to lay it down so you can see it. Well, maybe I need to hold it up. There are 2 crochet ends. Okay. This Fix It is specifically for garter stitch because you have to work the hook back and forth on garter stitch. The other one that we keep in the shop, and I order these 40 at a time. These are called stitch fixes too. And see how there's a crochet hook on one end and there's a knitting needle on the other. So you can use this to pick up stitches, to knit stitches with. If I have another class where I teach people how to fix their lace work. And let's say you have a lace work that's every 10 stitches, but your mistake is 4 rows down in one particular 10 stitch piece. Did you know you can take all of that out, fix that stitch, and knit it all back up? You don't have to rip back 4 rows of all your work. You just have to take back what's between the markers. And so when you have something like this, you can knit those few stitches as you need to back and forth. Okay. And I cannot live without a DPN in my bag. And I don't care if it's to hold stitches or to re-knit some. You might have come in the shop and I have it behind my ear. It's just an important tool for me. And typically, I mean, this one's probably a size 6. I would say between a 4 and a 6 is going to be the easiest thing for you to fix something with. And keep in mind, you might be wondering, well, it may change the gauge. The only thing that creates the gauge in knitting is the needle in your right hand. So if whatever you're knitting with, that's what determines the gauge. So it's interesting, sometimes people will need me to pick up an entire row 6 inches down from where they are. So if I pick up that row, sometimes I use a sock needle because it's so tiny and I can go through all those stitches and all that does is hold it. And then I can go back and knit it with the right size needle. Okay. So this is my go-to, probably the last tool, and I don't use it a lot, mainly because I don't have time to knit such intricate pieces, but I know that my customers do, is dental floss. If you're using a interchangeable tip, and you know how it has that little hole to put your pin through? If you use dental floss and you go through there and you just knit along, that dental floss goes through the work and it's your lifeline. So let's say you mess up and you need to frog it, which means to rip it out. You can pull it all back to that safety line and you're golden. Okay, so dental floss is a wonderful tool. It's very thin and it's easy to work with. Okay. All right, and here's one more. This is the one I hope you never have to use. This is the one where you've knit this gorgeous sweater. Everything is wonderful, and oops, you have a hole. Or you have a drop stitch and it's way too late to fix it. So you want to pick, this is just a regular tapestry needle, and it's got the yarn in it that I'm going to use. And you always want to fix it from the back. So what I'm going to show you today is a hole that I formed on purpose, but I'm going to show you how it disappears. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at the piece I have here. So I cast on, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20. I cast on 20 stitches, but when you look at my work, here I have the first 5. Well, that should be 5, and look, there's only 4. That should be 5, and oh my gosh, there's 7. And then there's 5 here. So it's typically I don't see this many mistakes in one spot, but like I said, these are common mistakes. Okay, so the first thing, I lost my camera. Oh, there we go. The first thing that we're going to fix is when you look at this garter, do you see how this is a knit stitch right here? Can you see that? All right, I need to turn that knit stitch into a purl, okay? So what I'm gonna do, I'm just going to, and you know, a lot of times people wanna know, why do you knit on circular needles? Well, one, I don't lose them. I have room for more stitches, but also it's easy for me to take it and slip it back and forth if I have to fix something. All right, so I'm gonna take this out, and you can see it's on this 3rd stitch, okay? So I'm gonna release it. And that's another thing. I don't want you to be afraid of releasing your stitches, because once you learn to fix it, it really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna take this out. And this knit is gonna go away, okay? All right, so now I need to make this a purl. Here it is, lost my stitch. Okay. This one was a knit, and so to make it a purl, I have to put this bar on the opposite side of the stitch. See how I put it in the front now? So if I take my fix-it tool and I pull that through, look, it became a purl now. Okay, then I have to go back and I have to re-knit. So this is going to be a knit because I'm working in garter. Okay, and then this has to be a purl. And remember, I told you it's in the front. So I pull it this way. And the last thing is a knit. So when I put it back on my needle, let's take a look. I don't have the mistake anymore. Now it's, here's the purl, here's the knit, here's the purl, here's the knit. I'm fine. The next mistake I have, and this is the one that happens the most often. Do you see how there's like an X on the needle? You can tell there's something funny about this stitch because there's a yarn over involved. Look at that. See, this is not right. What's happened is this stitch was not complete. So what I'm going to do I'm going to still slip my stitches. Are you watching how I'm slipping the stitches? Notice I do it as if to purl, because if I don't, then my stitches will twist and it'll make me even crazier. Okay, so here's the problem stitch. All this is a stitch that wasn't complete. So this was the old stitch. This is the new stitch. So to finish it, I take the old stitch. Let's see. I take the old stitch and I pull it over the new one. And look, the X disappears, the extra stitch disappeared, and everything is right again. Okay, so now this is a hole that happened, and I'm going to show you how to fix that later. I can't get to this fix yet. So let me move the stitches. And you'll notice there are 6 stitches between my stitch markers. So it's because of this hole. The little problem that I just fixed, if you knit both of those pieces, this is what happens. So what I'm going to show you how to get rid of this hole, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of that extra stitch. Okay, one of the most common questions that's asked in the shop, in a pattern, what does SM mean and what does PM mean? Well, PM means place marker and SM means slip marker. Okay, like I said, these are the most commonly asked questions. All right, so here's that. Oh, no, this is the one I need to fix. All right, so you'll notice that here is the drop stitch. And remember, I told you you really need to have some kind of a locking stitch marker to hold on to your drop stitches. Because this is stockinette, it's going to be so much easier for me to fix a drop stitch. I'm going to fix it on the right side. Even if you see the stitches dropped on the back side, just push it through. Okay, fix it on the right side so you can just use the knit side. Now watch what we're going to do. I put my fix it through the drop stitch and I'm down 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. I can do this. I put this here. Nope. Working off my phone is hard. I fixed 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when I put that back on, I need to put my stitch marker back on so I know where I'm at. You'll notice how I put it on. I want the stitch to lay this way. If we don't allow the stitch to lay this way, then it's twisted, okay? So a drawback on picking up a drop stitch. Let's say you're working in like fingering weight yarn and you drop it down, I don't know, 7 rows. When you have it that far down, and let's say you're knitting on size 2 needles, there's very little room to pick that up. So sometimes what I do, I'll lay it down and I pull the stitches apart like this to give myself those bars to work with. And if it's too tight, you may want to rip it down depending on where it is in your garment. My goal is to always keep customers from having to rip. But sometimes if you can't make it look good, you know, ripping it is your only option. Okay, So then, let me take this marker out. Okay. This is a purl stitch in the wrong place. It should be a knit stitch. I'm going to fix it just like I did the drop stitch. And notice I'm just letting it go. But I hope you're watching. I have a stitch on each side held secure because I don't want to drop everything. I only want to fix this stitch. So what I'm going to do, I've got to take the stitch out of the purl, and I need to put this in the back of the stitch, because to make a purl, a knit, the bar needs to go in the back. Now here's a little caveat about changing purls to knits. In order to knit a purl stitch, you have to go all the way around the needle, or it's a whole different method to create the purl. You go around instead of just through. More yarn is used. So don't panic if the stitch ends up being a little big. In blocking, that'll fix it. So let's take a look at what I fixed. You can tell that this stitch is just a little longer than the rest, but it'll be okay. Like I said, after you block it, that stitch will fix itself. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to put my stitches over. How's everybody doing? Because now I'm going to knit a little bit. I'm going to knit a row. Everybody okay?
How come you can't fix it as you're knitting across and you come to that spot? Then you wouldn't have to do all. You could?
You can't. It's just for the sake of the class. I have to have all the mistakes done at once.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
But yes, that sweet Martha, when she would come and knit with us, she would say, "Admire your work often."
Mm-hmm.
Because once you finish a row, look at it, read your stitches. But if you're like me and you're knitting in front of the TV and you're going to town and this is no big deal, oop. And when you look back and there's a drop stitch or a stitch that hasn't been completed, then you're in big trouble. But yeah, you are right. You should always fix it as you go along.
Across. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna knit back so we can get some things fixed. All right. So I've got 5 stitches of knit. And I should have 10 stitches. I should have 10 stitches of stockinette, but I don't. And like I said, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And this is a regular purl. Sometimes I knit in combination, but this is see how it has to go all the way over the needle? That's why we use a little bit more yarn in purling than we do in knitting. If you're a combination knitter where you do it like this, then you have to knit through the back loop. Whoop, on your way. I have very little space to work, so I appreciate all of your patience. Okay. And then the last is knit. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of things, but talk really how we're going to knit 2 together. So when I first started knitting, the joke of knitters was, "Oh, you have too many stitches, I'll knit 2 together." Or Oh, I don't have enough stitches. Oh, I just make one. Well, depending on the type of garment that you're making, there's a chance that you could really have a big oops because it'll show. So you want to create something where if you have to knit two together or you have to make one, you want to do it in an area that's not so visible. Okay. Yesterday I was knitting a sock and I knit 7.5 inches of a sock and I was 2 stitches short. I'm like, I don't know how I did that. So in order to create those stitches, I put it into the gusset because I could hide it there. And it's not going to change the size of the sock, but it is going to change the lace if I don't put it in. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at what we've got here. I'm 5, 5, and 6. I've got to get rid of a stitch. And what I've noticed with my customers is that they want to fix it the second they see it. You really have to pay attention to your pattern. You don't want it to show, okay? So here I'm gonna knit because this is, oh, I gotta a little bit more out of here. And there's my yarn bar. Okay, there you go. On live TV, okay. All right. So let's say for the sake of that I don't have enough stitches in this block, okay? If I wanted to create another stitch, I could knit front because I need a knit, right? But if I knit back, it creates a purl. Well, I don't want to do that. So what I do is I'm going to do a backward loop cast on. And by doing that, I want to show you. All right, this is a backward loop cast on, but notice how, see how this is a purl in the back? When I pull that up, I've made a stitch and it's not going to create a hole. If you did a knit front back, that's fine, but there could be a hole and you don't want that. And I did it right up next to the change in pattern. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, I have too many stitches because of this mistake. I can't knit these two together, even though this is where the mistake happened. I have to hide it over here, okay? I don't want anybody to see it. So I'm going to knit one more. I'm going to, well, actually, I'm going to fix it right here because I want to keep this line straight. If I knit it together with this one, this line will disappear. So I'm going to knit it together. And by knitting things together, it hides the stitch a little better than if you did a slip, slip knit. Okay. And notice I tugged up on it because I don't want there to be a hole. I'm going to finish this up. And then when we do it, look at it up really close, you can see it. But as my friend Stacy says, who's going to see it on a galloping horse? Okay, so when you look, now I have my 5 stitches. And as you come down, can you see where I fixed it? It's very difficult to see. Very difficult to see. But it's okay because I fixed it against the line and not right in the middle. Okay. And this I added a stitch, but you can't see that because it's tight. This was the backward loop cast on, okay? All right, now let's fix this hole. We're not gonna fix it in the front. We're going to fix it in the back. And I like the way it almost shows you exactly where to put your yarn. See how there are 4 stitches? 1, 2, 3, 4. And it almost looks like a circle, all right? That's where the yarn is gonna go. So I'm gonna find my, dropped it on the floor. Find my tapestry needle. Oh. And I go through this loop and this one. And notice I'm leaving a tail because I'm going to need to weave that in. And then I go through this one and this one. Oop. Now watch what's going to happen from this side. Okay, there's the hole. But when I pull my yarn, it totally disappears. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. I'm going to finish my fix because I only went one time. I'm going to do it one more time up through. Oop. That way I can pull these opposite. And now look, it's gone. And typically, I mean, I'm only 3 rows down. I only have 20 stitches. Yes, I should pull it out. That would be the real fix. But sometimes when people ask me to block their garments and they're finished, and you know, I've got them on the blocking board and oh my gosh, there's a big hole. That's why I always tell you, don't weave your ends in if you give it to me to block, because I use those ends to do things like this, okay? This happens. We can't, sometimes we just can't help it. But that's how it's fixed, okay? Y'all been so quiet and I just talk and talk and talk. What can I help you with? What questions do you have of me?
When you're doing something like a cable and you make a mistake, is there some way to back it up just the same way, or do you have to really tear it out?
You know, that's a great question. You really can take it back.
Can you?
You really can take it back, especially if you're using like your stitch markers, because let's say it's one particular leg of your cable. You can take just those 3 out, because what I've seen in the past on people's work and my own, I'm not going to say I don't make mistakes. Let's say you're doing the cable and there's a big purl ridge across your cable. All right. So yeah, you've got to take that down and then just do 1 stitch at a time. Don't do all 3, just do 1 stitch at a time.
Yeah.
And then it'll be fine. Now, if your cable goes the wrong direction, I have a pair of socks where I don't think any of my cables are going the right direction. So what you would do is to take all the work down of those, typically, let's say it's 6 stitches. You would take all the stitches down and rework it, depending on how far you had to pull it down.
Yeah, I think the problem would be if you have to go over the cross where it crosses in the back. I would think that would be a mess.
Well, it kind of is. It kind of is. But it's one of those things that's like lace. If you can pull it down just that far and then work it back, the things I have to remember, I have to remember what row I'm working. If
Yeah.
I'm off one row, it throws it all off.
Yeah.
So when I pull it down, I think, okay, this was row 14, this was row 13, this is row 12. All right, what am I doing on row 11? And then I work back that way.
Okay.
So it helps. It helps a lot that way. And also you have those DPNs ready to go to pick things up.
Yeah.
And,
I've
and
had
those
it happen to
locking
me
stitch
before, and
markers.
I've ended up just pulling it all the way out because I just couldn't figure out how to, if it was beyond where it crossed over kind of thing. So,
Right. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do have to do that, and that's okay.
right. Okay.
Uh, Sorry about that. My phone went kablooey again. There we go. Anybody else?
I have a general question
Sure.
for you. I'm
Sure.
Diane from Hewitt, Texas,
Hey,
Right.
Diane.
right up the road from you. And when you were introducing the different pieces that you keep in your knitting bag,
Yes.
and you talked about the DPN, and you said basically it's a good idea to keep one between, what'd you say, 4 and 6 or something
Mhm.
like the size. When you talk about numbers like that with needles, are you referring to US or millimeters?
Thank you. You are so kind. Yeah, I am talking about US.
I thought you would.
I'm a former math teacher, and that whole thing, I can teach the metric system better than anybody, but I can't remember to save my life what the metric system is compared to a US.
I don't know metric, so I have to look every time somebody in a pattern has metric numbers.
Right.
And it just throws me off a little bit. So I just wondered what you did.
I do. I really work in just US because that's what makes sense to me. But I do have brands of yarn, and when they talk about gauge and things like that, all they talk about is millimeters. So I have to go back, and I keep needle gauges with me all the time for y'all because I don't want to mess up for you.
Well, I thank you for that answer. That's a good one. That was what I like to do is US. So,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
but I didn't know.
Well, I love what I do, and it's always interesting when people bring me patterns, and sometimes they're in foreign languages. I learned so much. But yeah, when it's in metrics, it's always something that I have to really think hard about. But I try to only work in US because it makes sense to me. Going
Good.
back and forth, it'll throw me off.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Does anybody else have a question? Well, I know I kind of worked through all of this pretty quickly. If you ever have a problem and you're close by, you can pop into the shop and I'll help you at any time. The video has been recorded and it will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you so very much.
Have a good day.
Wonderful. I can't wait to get into the shop one day soon.
Oh, I do too. I do too. It's
Hope
just,
so.
it makes it a lot more personable.
Yeah, I know things have thrown us a curve here, but we'll make it somehow.
It just makes me work smarter. Not necessarily harder, but I work smarter. Thanks again, everybody. Y'all have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.